Paradise is Hulu's critically acclaimed addictive drama series starring Sterling K. Brown, Julia Nicholson, and James Marsden. A serene community is rocked by a shocking murder and the high-stakes investigation that follows. Filled with nail-biting twists and turns, the Daily Beast calls Paradise your next TV obsession, and the New York Times says it's exhilarating in all the right ways. Paradise is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Drama Series. For more information, visit fyc.hulu.com. Hi, everyone. The summer movie season is off and running, and the best shows on television are being celebrated as Emmy season is in full swing. But you also might have noticed a less than celebratory mood from a lot of parts of Hollywood despite all of this. It's not just the threat of 100% tariffs on movies, whatever that winds up meaning, or even the box office receipts that are maybe a little bit less than people hoped for. Hollywood is still 5 years after COVID in more or less a constant state of existential crisis. And no one is better at noticing that or discussing it than my colleague Richard Rushfield, who is joining me again this week to explain what he described in a recent newsletter as the 8 plagues that have rocked the industry over the past decade. I asked him to come and check in on how we're recovering from any of those, if at all, what the future might hold, and what's giving even a skeptic like Richard hope that the art form we both love can survive all of this eventually. After that, you'll hear my conversation with 2 people who made a show that really is about finding hope in dark times. I talked to Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna about the final season of their Star Wars series Andor and the, yes, rebellious spirit that it took to make a show that is that enormous and ambitious and excellent. I'm Katey Rich, and this is the Prestige Junkie Podcast. So, Richard, I kind of count on you when I read your column to give me the broader story of what is going on in our industry. I feel like one of the positions that you take often is saying, look, this is a problem we have now. This is the origins of it a long time ago. And you wrote recently about the 8 plagues that have defined the industry, I guess in a decade. I don't know if you gave it a real timeline, but kind of the plagues that got us where we are today, right?
Yeah, kind of. I'm not sure the 10, 9, 8-ish years of 8 plagues, but it's still counting. That's not the final tally. I think we'll go into double digits before we're done.
Well, we're recording this a little in advance, so I don't want to have you weigh in on the tariffs, because God knows it can change. Yeah. But since you wrote that, are you feeling any more bullish about the 100% tariff on movies? That makes perfect sense and is a well thought out idea. Is that gonna blow up the industry next?
So I never believed that was going to happen, like it was said, and that was a real thing instead of. But its effect is very real, which was to notify Hollywood that your president is watching you and can do a lot of things to make your life uncomfortable. So you better everything from your broadcast licenses to mergers to tariffs and all sorts of things, ways we can make your business unpleasant for you. And I think that was the point of that announcement. And that's why it remains a plague, even if no tariffs ever happen.
Yeah, it's a misery that we'll be dealing with for 4 years, kind of, no matter what actually happens legally. And very different from the last 4 years that we were dealing with this.
Yeah, and he certainly will find ways to enforce it. I mean, last time he held up the AT&T Warner Brothers merger for 2 years just because of annoyance about CNN. So
yeah. So, so these plagues that you're describing, I think, as you wrote, too, like some of them, like Me Too, obviously, like a long overdue reckoning, a lot of good came out of it. Same with something like Oscar So White. But they all kind of lend to this sense of the ground shifting under your feet. Like, it's all these things that have happened to the industry, and everyone in town has had to say, okay, wait a second, I got to totally change the way that I'm doing this. And, for some of them, like the shrinking of the theatrical window are still ongoing. Is that the thing that links all of them? Not that they're good or bad things, but they just inflict change on an industry that might not be ready for it.
Yeah. I mean, even the good changes point out how bad things were before and bring to light of that. And within the good, there's always overreach and concern and bedlam. And, Hollywood is on the brink of hysteria at any moment at the best of times. So, throw in a little crisis and people being dragged off to prison. and that's heightened all the more. It's just a number of things that just feel like the entire ground is shifting beneath our feet, and we're trying to figure out where it all lands.
Yeah. I mean, is this not theoretically how the industry has always been? You know, like all these studios were flush with cash and owned their movie theaters and built huge movie palaces in the 1920s that then had to change entirely because sound came along. Like, isn't a crisis kind of baked into how this business works?
Yeah, but usually you get one at a time, and they've got time and space to adapt to them. And maybe with the advent of television, there was a bit of a feeling of, is this all going to work out? No, but there's really that sense now. Like, there's never been before, like, oh, are people going to stop watching film entertainment? Which, you know, I don't think they entirely will, but they might.
But it might be made by TikTokers instead of Hollywood. Like,
they might just be, you know, very possible 10 years from now, we'll just watch, you know, people filming themselves, like, riding skateboards into walls or something like that.
I feel like our creators expert Natalie Jarvie would say that TikTok is a much richer field than that, but I'll let her make that argument. So I'm going to walk through the list of plagues unless you'd rather say it yourself, just so everyone knows what we're talking about here. So we've got Me Too, as mentioned. The loss of Fox, which is interesting to me that you consider that, like, you know, the loss of one studio being large enough to constitute a plague on the entire industry. But
yeah, I mean, we had 6 of them, and now we have 5. Those 6 had been the number for 50 years there since MGM and RKO went away. That's losing, you know, about 20% of our production capacity when Fox went away, and a whole historical legacy and a separate production entity and all this stuff. That was a huge blow.
Yeah. All right. I'll take it. We got COVID, Oscars So White, and the strikes, all pretty self-explanatory in their disruptive capability. Digital change in viewing habits and preferences, obviously ongoing, and the dissolution of the theatrical model, which is pretty much linked to number 7 there. You've started doing kind of weekly box office check-ins with Sean McNulty on Substack Live. Everyone listening to this should subscribe so they can see them live. I mean, in general, with the summer box office as we've watched it happen thus far, like, are you seeing any sense of recovery from this plague that Hollywood kind of brought upon itself by trying to abandon the theatrical model?
Well, so this week we talked about it. There was the narrative of the last few weeks after the success of Sinners and Minecraft in particular that we're back.
Yeah.
And then Thunderbolts started off okay. So that's back too. And then
so now we're not back.
And then we had a weekend where they didn't open a new movie in the height of summer. You know, at the most valuable real estate on the calendar, they didn't open a movie. And it was a mediocre weekend. And Thunderbolts, which was in its second week, had a just okay hold. And, you know, we talk a lot about depth, too. You can't just have a movie business that's just about one blockbuster every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That is not enough to keep this alive. There has to be depth and choice and all these things, and the lack of depth to the box office complexion is alarming.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that at this point that there ever is going to be any true we're back feeling? Like, you know, last summer we went through almost this exact same thing when The Fall Guy underperformed, then everyone eventually calmed down. Like, I'm now looking at the reviews of Mission Impossible and thinking, oh, God, we're going to have another tough turn here. But is it always going to be up and down like this forever?
I mean, the narrative will wildly swing based on whatever happened the last weekend. And I think there will be good weekends. Like, there's plenty of movies this summer that should do very well. But it misses the point. It's like, if Jurassic World does well, that's great. But that's not like the whole industry is saved because this one movie did well. You could very well have Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch both be massive hits, which would be great. But
yeah.
2 movies, even 2 hits at the same time is not saving the business. You need to have like this constant ongoing depth that keeps the theaters alive, keeps people coming. And I think people should really regard this as like the audience is kind of on the fence about, are movies important to them? Are they part of their lives? By and large, they're not part of people's lives, except for very special occasions. And when we make them big events right now, I know, you know, I know for my kids, and they're thinking that they could really take or leave them at this point. You know, they're not against movies. They're not out to destroy them, but if they went away for a few years, would they notice? I'm not so sure. So we should really look at this as a moment like the audience is on the fence and they're going to fall off one way or the other.
Well, isn't the way to get that consistency back is to just release more movies? Like, it seems so simple to me. And like, obviously not every movie that you're going to pay to put in theaters is going to make its money back. But like, you build a habit by just doing it over and over again, right?
Yeah. I mean, more movies and also different movies, more movies that don't look like, you know, part 11 of a series that we've been watching forever. And, you know, I'm sure Jurassic Park, whatever number that is now, should do really well. That the formula of our dinosaurs got loose and they're after me holds up well.
I'm going to try I showed my kids Jurassic Park, and I'm going to try not showing them any of the others and just doing the new Jurassic World, because I honestly feel like that's about all you need. Like, they probably didn't even need to see that one. It seems like a pretty self-explanatory concept.
Do you think there's a person alive who could tell you the whole story of the Jurassic saga, movie by movie, and then they created this canyon in Utah where they decided that or whatever the heck.
Well, I was realizing that I know that Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum and Sam Neill all came back for one of them, and I have no idea what they did in it or how it connected to their characters. I have no idea whatsoever.
I imagine they helped them catch the dinosaurs.
The first one, all they did was run away. They're smart. They just get out of there. That'll be an interesting test of continuity there. I also feel like Thunderbolts deserves a little bit more credit for, you know, being the 35th Marvel movie or whatever, but not feeling exhausting. I had skipped a lot of the recent ones, and I don't know if you saw that one. Like, I feel like it deserves a little better than it's getting.
I liked Thunderbolts. I enjoyed it. It did feel different. But when you look at superhero fatigue now, that's a real thing. That's a real monkey on your back when you're opening these movies. Like, as you say, 35 of these, plus, you know, Spider-Man villains and Venom 3 and
I saw Madam Web.
And how many Shazam movies and you know, I think Thunderbolts in itself was fine, but like, I really think the mountain of like what you've got to do to get people excited about a superhero movie gets higher and higher. Mm-hmm. And the results of Thunderbolts are sort of fine by the new shrunken expectations of Marvel. You know, if you look at where it stands on the overall Marvel charts, it's a disaster.
Are you feeling skeptical about Superman and Fantastic Four coming not too long from now?
I just made the bet that Superman would end up on the top 3 of the summer, but okay. I'm a little worried about the bet. It is a different kind of film and it has a reason to be and all that, but you know, like I say, the mountain of superhero fatigue that you've got to get over is really high, I think.
Let's see. What about Superman in the top 3? I feel like Lilo and Stitch is the one that I think is just going to dominate the summer at this point. And
Sean McNulty and I both predicted that would be the number 1 movie of the summer.
Okay, good. All right. That's not my hot take then. I got to come up with another one.
I'll tell you, when we were at CinemaCon and we were shown looks at Superman and Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts, to me, I went into that saying, oh, Thunderbolts looks like something a little gritty and different. And Superman has a reason for being, and there's a real story there. And Fantastic Four kind of looks like the roadkill. That looks like cookie cutter superhero by the numbers. For the theater owners, whom, shall we say, are not the most, are not looking for the greatest kind of intellectual challenge.
Sure.
In their movie going.
You want people to have a good time in their theater.
I felt when the Thunderbolts thing came up, they were like, what is this thing of these dirty people sitting in a truck arguing with each other? Why are you, what is this? And then Fantastic Four came up and they're like, yes, okay. Silver Surfer. Okay. Look at those costumes and shiny, and look, big stars, fantastic.
They know what the people like. So at the end of the summer, we get to see who's right, I guess.
Creatively, the theater owners and I do not see eye to eye on this, but
you have a great time together in the Vegas buffet lines, as far as I've been able to tell.
I do. They
they're all very nice people.
It's a week of some wonderful hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah, there you go. To rewind a bit, but before we were getting into the summer movie season, as you said, the dual hits of Minecraft and Sinners were kind of making everyone feel optimistic. And Minecraft, I don't think that hit needs a ton of explaining. But Sinners created just weeks and weeks of, everyone stumbling over themselves trying to explain away why this movie didn't make any sense as a hit, and talking about the heads of Warner Brothers, Mike and Pam, which you wrote about as well. And the thing that I feel like we still haven't really grappled with from Sinners is it's like a movie that went viral for being good.
Yeah.
It's not like it was pre-sold anything. And I think if it hadn't been any good, it wouldn't have had that going for it. And I don't know that anyone has really reckoned with how it can be that simple, how a movie can become a hit because everyone just wants to tell their friends that it's really good and to go see it. Am I oversimplifying the phenomenon of this?
I think that's the basis of it. I think in the last year, we've seen a lot of good movies that didn't find an audience, and a lot of very good movies that just sort of die on the vine. I mean,
sure.
The Academy Award winners of last year, if you look at Andor and The Brutalist, never found that much of,
Look, a complete unknown, your pick for Best Picture winner made a good bit of money. So there's hope out there.
That did all right, but I mean, Andor made a tenth of what Sinners has.
Tom Quinn's going to call you. Remember how he talked about how much money they made on VOD? I realize it's not the same thing, but I do think Andor got seen.
In terms of box office, Andor and The Brutalist both, were very moderate successes. So I think people are used to seeing these good movies fall away. But I think when you have the right movie, it's kind of a genre movie. Sinners is a good movie, but it's not, people arguing about architecture in the 1940s or anything. So it is a genre movie, which is, if you look at the independent film, all that, and the big successes, the Sundance films that are big successes, they tend to be genre movies. Make something that's in kind of a genre with a real director and a real star, and if it's actually good and people really like it, I think that's a great formula when you can do it.
Well, now that all the dust has settled from the talk about Ryan Coogler's deal to get the rights to Sinners back, and it feels like everyone's calmed down a little bit, what did we learn from all of that? How do we avoid everyone kind of embarrassing themselves by really wanting to step up front of the line and be like, here's why this artist having creative control was bad? It felt embarrassing for everybody involved, but I don't know if anyone learned anything.
I think the trade media has become captive to the corporate interests in a way, which are very focused on the bottom line. Since the beginning of Hollywood, there have always been the bean counters that are, are you crazy? Going to spend this kind of money on some book about the Civil War? That's always been there. But those kind of sentiments are the dominant driving force in Hollywood right now. And I think the trade reporting reflects that a lot, and just sort of picks up this outrage, this kind of bean counter outrage of how dare you spend this much money on a movie, and this is irresponsible spending. I've written that like we were saying, the audience is on the fence about film. So this is a time for irresponsible spending. This is a time to do lots of things that won't make any sense on the books, and just do what you can to make crazy projects that people wouldn't have considered a few years ago. And there's a lot to be said that Ryan Coogler's deal was unusual and set a precedence, whatever, which it may have, but I feel like not my problem, and not if the CFOs and CAA want to argue about that, then God bless them. I have other things that I want to focus on. At the end of the day, are you making movies that don't look anything like the kind of cookie cutter direct that has dominated the theaters for the last 10 years and almost chased audiences away entirely?
Yeah, honestly, to the Minecraft movie's credit, it's has its faults as a movie, but it's the work of an individual person. It's got Jared Hess's trademark on it, so and give that movie credit for what it did there too. I mean, I've been having this thought about television as well. We're in the middle of Emmy season. I've been watching a bunch of TV. On this episode, People Here After We Talk, I talked to Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna about Andor. I mean, that show is incredibly expensive to make. Like, not, Tony Gilroy has really had to shoot down the way people talk about it, because when you look at how the show works, it's really like 4 movies in a single season of television. So it just has to be expensively done. It feels like something that like everyone would be too afraid to make now, but it's also like one of the best things Star Wars has ever done, period. And like the economics of the streaming era have made it all this incentive for people to be like, oh, but if we can put in 10 cheaply animated shows and it gets the same subscriber churn, then who cares? Like, I worry that we counted on television to do what we're talking about, like throw money at something, make something big and ambitious. And now they're losing their nerve too. And then we're going to be left with nothing. Like, I feel like you don't write about TV as much as you do about film in this way, but do you see that happening too, that like reversion back to like the cheapest, simplest way to go about doing this?
I mean, the thing was, the streaming era like never made any sense, and it never like there was never any kind of standards of like what's a success and what means it and how does this company even make money? And with 2 of the biggest producers, Amazon and Apple, like, we don't even know why they're in this business or what they're doing here. Basic questions like that. So in that world, it was very easy to think, well, nothing matters. So let's just do, they can just do anything, and they just will forever, because why not? It's a rounding error. But eventually, even the world's biggest companies don't like to lose money infinitely.
That much.
Yeah. And just, it is not good for the arts, just like not to have any kind of public feedback loop about what is a success and what is it here. So I think we're going through a retrenchment that will hopefully result in some kind of understanding of that with these companies.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many expensive shows that have been made in the last 10 years that are not good at all. And they throw a bunch of money at something that's boring, and like people watch out of a sense of obligation. Yeah. And
I mean, I think TV overall these days, like, I mean, I look at what's nominated for the Emmys, the best categories, and I say, you're telling me this is a golden age? Like, this looks like
oh, no. Are you going to start naming names? I'm going to lose interviews in this podcast.
I won't go into names, but, just look at the shows that are nominated for the 3 big categories, and it looks like a weak Bronze Age at best, is what I would say.
Well, and I talked to Leslie Goldberg on this podcast a couple weeks ago. When you get something like The Pit, which is made much more like traditional television on a set in Los Angeles, it's 15 episodes. Like, it works like a classic show when it's really good and it's satisfying people who are looking for that level of storytelling. You're like, okay, fine. We don't have to shoot in 5 countries over 6 months. Like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. But the idea that the next Tony Gilroy won't get to take a big swing and potentially make something as great as Andor, like, it bums me out. Like, I want us to be able to hang on to some of that, especially if movies are never going to make something as thematically rich as Andor, so someone's got to.
I mean, that stuff is always kind of the province of companies that are trying to break through into Hollywood. And there'll always be new companies coming in that want to make a big splash and kind of do different things. And, that's where Disney essentially was with streaming. It's still kind of at the tail end of their adventure of trying to build a streaming service, which they did successfully. And in the life of every billionaire and everyone who owns a company, there is one day when they wake up and they'll say, I know I'm really great at, we've got a great business here, producing these pharmaceuticals or this bottling plant that I have, but I really should be making movies. And they will keep coming. And the tech lords are the latest. Jeff Bezos had a vision. Whatever you think of the reasons why Amazon is doing this and everything, it comes through Jeff Bezos wanted to be in Hollywood. And he wanted to be making things in Hollywood. And then they figure out rationalizations of how it would help Amazon after that. And I'm sure
Well, and you think about Disney Plus and some of the best things that are on Disney Plus that have helped make it what it is Andor, which is, big and expensive and made like a movie and all these things you're not supposed to do. And then also Bluey, which is made by some rogue Australians for not very much money at all and is just done really creatively. So like the scope of what you can do that is creative and interesting, you don't have to have an infinite budget to do it. It might be nice, but there's hope that in this infinite choice era, that interesting things can still find their way there.
So here's my glimmer of hope for you that I'm going to write a column about probably 2 months from now.
Every now and then we make you express some hope.
This summer's column today for you. I think that the elements are all there for a real renaissance of independent filmmaking. And everything is out there that, first of all, there's a huge creative space being left by the studios. Lack of creativity. There's a huge, area of, any film that costs less than $100 million budget. There's very, very few of those being distributed. So there's a lot of space. There's theaters there's screens that are available. There's theater owners that are wanting them. The sort of iron death pact that the studios had with theater owners has been broken. So theater owners are desperate to do things. There's ways to distribute without having a giant 5,000 person distribution army. There are cheaper ways to market now. And with less production and everything moving overseas, there's ways to film really cheap. There's a whole lot of crew and a whole lot of sound stages and everything else sitting around. So all the elements are there. I think we're 3 years off from it being realized.
If you talk to independent filmmakers now, I feel like they would tell you it's impossible. But in 3 years is what you're saying.
The seeds have been planted, and the green shoots are not popping up yet. But if you went to Sundance this year, you didn't feel like you were in the middle of a renaissance. That's for sure. But if you look at all the elements, the remaining thing is for the independent film world to creatively rise to the challenge. That is what has to happen still.
Yeah. Well, again, to bring it back to Andor, that's a show all about, struggling and failing and fighting against something and losing until all of a sudden you start winning. So if this is the indie film world is in their Empire Strikes Back defeated moment and now they're about to come back, I think they'd like to hear that. It's
for them, but they have to step it up a little from what we've seen lately. Like they need to get up their game too. And
I think there's some interesting stuff coming. I think, you go on like the smaller scale you go to, I think, talking to people who haven't gotten their movie made yet, like the ideas, the ambition that's out there, as you were saying, is promising. And, I talked to the guy who made The Legend of Ochi about a month ago, and he described A24 and Neon as being like these like two suns on a barren planet. Like it's all that they have going for them. So you need 5 more of those, and then maybe we'll get somewhere.
The career of Sean Baker, just like there's a person he has a real vision for what he wants to make, of the kind of characters that he's interested in, the kind of stories he wants to tell, and he's explored them, and his craft has grown and improved, and now he is making things that are real cinematic stories.
He spent 20 years of struggle to get to that Oscar stage, but it was worth it.
The idea that we're just going to be Orson Welles and create this at age 24 is a tough thing to pursue. So.
Yeah, if you and I had been Orson Welles and got our hit at 24, where would we be? We wouldn't be here now podcasting, and so look at how everyone's benefiting from it.
I would be doing wine commercials right now. And
I look forward to moving into my wine commercial space. Yeah. So I'll let my private island go there.
We will sell no wine before it's time.
Richard, thank you for explaining the industry to me again. Maybe we'll check in at the end of summer and see how all of this went. I know you and Sean are on the box office beat, but I think we all have a lot writing on this summer. So
we do.
We'll check back in later. Paradise is Hulu's critically acclaimed addictive drama series starring Sterling K. Brown, Julia Nicholson, and James Marsden. A serene community is rocked by a shocking murder and the high-stakes investigation that follows. Filled with nail-biting twists and turns, the Daily Beast calls Paradise your next TV obsession, and the New York Times says it's exhilarating in all the right ways. Paradise is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Drama Series. For more information, visit fyc.hulu.com. Now let's hear my conversation with Tony Gilroy, the creator of Andor, and the show's executive producer and star, Diego Luna. The show is technically a prequel series. It shows the events that lead up to the 2016 Star Wars film Rogue One, which itself is, of course, a prequel to the very first Star Wars film, A New Hope. But across 2 seasons, Andor has become so much more than that. It's a broad canvas showing the birth of an entire rebellion and the many, many characters who are part of it and opposed to it. And that includes Diego Luna's Cassian Andor, who he first played back in Rogue One. Gilroy has always described the making of the show as being like making 4 movies a season. And I would argue that what you see in episodes 8 and 9 of this season of Andor, with the Gorman massacre and the escape from the Senate, are really as good as any action movie I have ever seen. But usually when you hear someone describe a TV season as being more like a long movie, it's not that good. You need good storytelling to sustain a TV show and not just to drag it on forever. And it's even rarer to get a prequel or any kind of expansion of a story that we already know that feels as rich and as thought through as Andor does. So I asked Gilroy and Luna basically why Andor is so great when so many other shows aren't. And then we also talked about how they powered through COVID in season 1 and then strikes in season 2 and budget problems and a million other things that make making any TV show difficult, but especially something as big as Andor. You can hear it all in my conversation with Andor's Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna. So to start by asking you guys, I wanted to ask what the conversations between the two of you before you start on the season are. But I guess it really starts with the story that you've told, Tony, of when you guys met up on the set of season 1 and said, we can't make this into 4 more seasons. Like, is that the origin of you guys talking about season 2 and what it would be shaped like, is deciding it was just going to be 1 more season?
Yeah, they were shooting in Scotland and I got out of quarantine and ran up there. And we had season 1 well in hand. I mean, I was finishing rewriting the last of the scripts for season 1, but it was already what we were going to do next. And we had promised 5 years. And Disney had asked us for 12 episodes for adhesion in the beginning. And I remember vividly this beautiful little hotel in Pitlochry that we were staying in while we were shooting, and the little tables in the back and good scotch, and oh my God, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? There's just at that point, it was absolutely evident how naive we had been in thinking that we could ever do 5. So it was that's my memory of it.
Yeah. And also that definitely we were not going to change anything, right? Like, I guess it was clear that it had to be done that way, that was the rhythm, that you couldn't speed up any process, right? Like, there was a certain amount of time needed to deliver what we were aiming to do. And I think it was pretty clear to everyone that we had an issue. What wasn't clear to everyone was the solution that Tony came up with pretty fast, because we after we had that meeting, we sat down with Sana, and then Katey came and we had dinner, and everyone was like, yeah, of course, you're right.
No, we were really nervous. Yeah, I remember came with the idea, we'll do 4 years, and then we got Sana involved. We said, what about that? And she was like, I don't know, you have to tell Katey, I don't know what they're going to say. And then Katey came, and she's like, well, let me ask, but I think they'll be into it.
Yeah. I think it was pretty clear that it was going to be impossible, but also that the way we were shooting was paying off, like the team we had was executing beautifully. But there was we were struggling with many things. We shot that first season while COVID, we are one of the first productions that went back to work. So the restrictions, the time, we're having half a day to do what was planned to do in 1 day. And it was difficult. So we couldn't rush anything and we couldn't start any other process. And one thing was clear, it all had to go through the same kind of it all goes through Tony, then starts to spread and spread and spread and spread and spread. And everyone needs time once you get the material to bring your own, So, yeah, it was clear.
There was no way to accelerate the process.
Yeah.
Or make it less expensive.
So then you go through COVID on the first season, but then the season 2 gets interrupted fairly quickly by the strikes, right? That starts while you're in production?
No, it's pretty late. No, pretty late. No. The way we do the show, as we've described before, is that every show, I'm assuming every show, every project, every script, they all have their own process, and you figure it out. And the thing that we figured out that worked for us came out of COVID, and it was, let's get everything to an absolutely scientifically prepared and managed and let's prep farther than anyone ever thought we would ever prep. And then let's let the directors and actors go to the set and make the show without adult supervision, let's say. Well, everyone's watching dailies. It's not free range, but, and that was our system. And that mandates that the scripts have to be just absolutely diamond hard, perfect from every meeting and every distance and every prop. And if you'd asked me the previous September and said, well, what's going to be the most important thing that happens to you this year? I would have said, at some point in the spring, we will finally final out the last script, we'll finally get there. That was the pace I was on to rewrite and build. And that happened a week before the strike. So all the scripts were in, and they had all been vetted by everybody in multiple meetings. Everything was ready to roll. And so when I had to disappear, it certainly wasn't ideal, but they had the blueprints. Yeah. They had the receipts. Yeah.
I think there was the communication was what we missed a lot, obviously, because even though Tony stays far away all through season 1, there is a constant communication open. Sure. And the weekends he had a call with the directors. You could call him right away after you clocked something. Every actor could send questions. He was always open, and we missed that. But at the same time, because we execute so closely and we worked so much as a team on the first season, the second season, it was the same people. That was important too. Everyone came back, that's normally no one really thinks about that because actors are meant to come back. But here the team came back, everyone from there was very few people that had to be replaced. Everyone came back because they loved the journey, because they wanted to finish the whole process, right? So everyone knew what to do. And there was a feeling of a responsibility that you had to be there, making sure Tony's vision was present every time. Everyone would go back to those meetings with Tony and say well, Tony would say this, Tony would think that. Sometimes we
interpreting scripture. What would
I
Jesus
like that
said?
Exactly. That's how things should be. Exactly.
Sometimes we even did
what would
versions,
Tony want?
Exactly. Let's do one take that is more what Tony would like us to do. But obviously, it was there was a sense of we had to represent his perspective there, and also we didn't want to be asked to go back and shoot later because you did.
I think it was more. Yeah, it was a fear-based.
No, but then the
rigor,
and then the actor strike came. This wasn't an easy. There was not a single moment where it was just easy shooting.
I mean, production-wise, and most of the people who listen to his podcast are in the business, I know. And and everybody knows, so much of what makes movie making or television making, everything's problem solving. That's all you're doing all the time. And what Zana and Wollenberg and David Miante and Luke and what the whole team did, they had 100 acres of rye planted up. No. In England, ready to ripen, to be perfectly ready for us to go there and film, and they got about halfway through it when SAG went out, and their solution for how to protect us and how to make sure that we could get what we needed later on was just, it was all revealed to me when it was over, but it was just insane what they did. They shot with stand-ins so that they could get camera positions. They plucked out all the grain and then rebuilt it on the Bond stage, and every sight line and every angle and everything was worked out. So when we came back, the problem solving was just super advanced, and what a luxury to be able to come back and go, are we ever going to be able to get it? Not only are we going to be able to get it, it's going to be better than it would have been the first time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Diego, you've gone through this process with this character for such a long time. First, you find out that, instead of 4 more seasons, it's 1 more. You're tracking this guy over 4 years in these chunks. Then you walk away from the set and come back as an actor. Like, what kind of mental adjustment is that part in it as you're closing this chapter? Or was it a worthy break to take before coming back and finishing the story?
I don't know. I never think about. I guess it's because I was invited to be part of the whole process. It's because of how I see what we actors bring to the table, how I was taught as a younger actor when I started in theater. I don't think about my process. That's the least important part, that comes once everyone is ready. Therefore, it comes in. It's part of something bigger. I was very worried for everything. On that last break. I was very worried for what Tony just talked about. But I was worried for the show not to be ready. And us coming out so late or even later than we did. I was worried for what it meant for the people actually, paying their lives from the work they're doing, what was going to happen to their lives if they had to look for something else. The worries were bigger. For me, the process as an actor is the luxury to get to the point where you're actually shooting. Like films that are not meant to be. There's many more films that never get made than the ones we do, right? Like the once actors are there is luxury. It's executing the very last beat of it. So I was very worried about everything else, about the whole machinery built for the show that suddenly had to stop,
Yeah.
And
so
I saw that on COVID. I had the COVID feeling of like, people not knowing what they were going to do, like not being able to work and the industry just collapsing as everything else. But so that was very fresh. And this strike was I was very worried.
Yeah. So once you're sitting behind the wheel of a spaceship, like that's the easy part. Like you can get all the pieces have fallen in place to make that possible.
And this is a character that also like everything around works, like makes it work, It's like you put those shoes on and you go like, oh shit, okay. You put the costume, you arrive to the set, you see the actors, and you have the page that, it's so rich, it's everything's there. I don't worry about that. I could be called to do a reshoot now and probably I'll be ready. But it's the whole thing that we put together that I was like, damn, let's hope we can come back soon to finish this, also because the show deserves to be done beautifully, and all these people involved and all their love and rigor and work,
I haven't really, because we're speaking before the last 3 episodes are airing, so I haven't gotten to hear you guys talk about them at all, which is very fun for me because I've read so many of the other interviews. And I like the way that these last 3 episodes, they become very Clea-centric and they become this interesting contrast between Cassian and Clea and how these 2 characters kind of bounce off of each other. And one of the pleasures of the show as it goes on is seeing characters meet. And Tony, you've talked about how hard it is to get people in a room together and get these characters across space and time. So why was that the grace note for the end of the series? Why were these 2 kind of the characters you wanted to bounce off of each other as a way to close things out?
Well, we knew that we had to do the Luthen Clea backstory. Even in the very beginning, when Stellan first signed on, in the very beginning, he made me promise that he would never have to do more than 2 seasons. Even when we were doing the 5, I was like, all right, well, I can. Yeah, no, I said I can do that because the contracts are really restrictive. So I said, no, I can. If you want out and end of 2, I can make that so. And then we'd also talked about a lot of talk about Luthen and what his secret identities and what's that's like and how we're going to do it. And it's not just wearing hats and what's his backstory.
Sure.
And I came up with a couple very ornate, soggy versions of it, tromping around. We both agreed that I hadn't landed there yet. And the one thing he said, I don't want it to be revenge. I don't want revenge to be my motivation in this. And but now the check was due on this, and we had seen over season 1 Elizabeth Dulau just rise.
And this is her first screen role, right? Like
really, like right out of RADA, and like, oh my God! And so I'm not stupid. I mean, let's go where there's. I mean, I just wanted to write more for her, And I wanted to do that. And this idea presented itself and it felt legit. And we had the technology to do it. And we're going to show it tonight. And I'm so pleased that it's like I was talking to my brother, Johnny, yesterday. And, 8 and 9 made such a big noise, they really made a big noise.
You knew it would, right? Like
I don't know, maybe not quite what you think, but yeah,
Okay.
we kind of knew it was going to have an impact. But I'm so pleased that 10 is the episode that follows it because I'm so proud of it, but it's also so unusual and it's such a great gear change. I don't know. Am I answering the question? I can't remember.
Yeah, well, I guess when then Cassian is sent to rescue her, and they argue a lot.
Oh, what's
the last
there?
two
Yeah,
episodes.
that's partially circumstantial, isn't it? They'd had that big scene in 9 where he comes back and says, because we had to restructure 8 and 9, and all of a sudden we needed a scene for him and credentials and the legitimacy of that, and all of a sudden that scene rose up. And she's just, by that point, I knew where we were going to go. And it's, if you talk to Stellan about Luthen, he's been afraid of her from the very first moment she came in and auditioned for us. I mean, and to gradually realize who's in charge of that relationship and who really is the spine there is it's a really satisfying card to turn.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Diego, like having heard about, there's a lot to bounce off of in these last few episodes, but like, where did you want to make sure that we left this guy? We kind of know where he's going right after this, but there's a lot of emotional states to put him in too. So what were you hoping to see in these last few episodes of where we leave Cassian for this round?
I think it's and you were saying in those scenes and all the story with Clea, it's really important to give Luthen, the weight on Cassian's journey and awakening, and that's why also when you see him in Rogue One, he clearly belongs to different,
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the richness of Luthen's path is reflected on these two probably very different but complementary perspectives, of Clea and Cassian, and that opportunity he has to talk about it at the end in front of everyone and making sure it's clear why he's going to do what he will do, we understand really what's behind. I think
so many people posited that she was his sister. They were always trying to figure out where the sister was all the way through.
That's a Star Wars thing, right? Everyone thinks everyone should be related.
I know, exactly.
Luke
But in the end, they're more correct than they're not. I mean, they are the children of Luthen, right? They really are. And they, just like a brother and sister would, they've taken different lessons from what it means, but they share so much in common. And he's so disappointed to bring her back to Yavin and have her to promise her that she'll be a hero there. I think that scene in the hospital is so disappointing for him to have to say it's not what I advertised. I really felt like that's a brother-sister scene as much as anything else.
Yeah. Well, and it's a fascinating twist, too, that, he arrives with this information about the Death Star plans that we know is going to set so much in motion. And everyone's like, no, like, I don't believe you a bit. Like,
no, consider the source. Yeah.
Yeah.
Consider the source.
Like, did you always kind of know that was, how this is going to be met at first?
Yeah, I mean, the Luthen's adversarial relationship with Yavin was always going to be baked in. I mean, he was going to be a variant of the Saw Gerrera.
Sure.
I mean, how many people that do startup companies end up being inappropriate CEOs once things take off? I mean, they just do. I mean, really. And how many original gangsters of anything, legit or criminal or what otherwise, how many the original gangsters get popped.
That's one way to put it. This is kind of a big question to ask for people who've actually made something. But, you guys talk about this as making for 3-hour Star Wars movies, like the thinking of this as a film. But I've heard so many people talk about making television as one long movie, and you watch it and it doesn't work. It doesn't work as episodic storytelling. It feels too long or convoluted or something. And this show works with that attitude about it. And I want to figure out what it is that Andor does that is so hard for other people to do in expanding a world. And I don't know if you guys have an answer because you made it, but I wonder if you feel like you know.
No, don't follow the rules. I mean, in the beginning, there were a couple people that were involved in the show were like, when I had the first 3 episodes, they're like, no, you have to do television. The first episode has to be the 15th episode, and this has to happen, and this has to happen, and you can't invest that much time in the characters. And I mean, man, rules I hate precedent. I hate precedent when it's a negotiation, and I hate rules when anybody tells me that I can't do something. It makes me want to do it. And I think we're reinventing constantly now through time how stories are being told. And this is just another stepping stone going forward. I think everybody's just going to keep building on. I mean, now writers have time on their dial, on their computer. It's like there's a whole new plug-in that you never had before. It used to be 130 pages, just like, man, slavishly. Now it's like, wow, am I 5 episodes? Am I 3? Am I 9? Am I forever? And then ignore, what do you have to do? You have to have people want to turn the page. You have to have everybody want to see what happens next. If you can just do that, you win.
But also, I think no one could mimic what happened here, because this belongs to this story, and this story had many things like that made it special. One is that you have that last film you have to get to. The other is that there was a plan. You see I don't know, like when you have Melshi in the first season, and the thing about the blaster and the story. There is opportunities here that you won't find anywhere else. And I think it's beautiful to talk about the freedom that this new format should bring, instead of the opposite, like, oh, now that we have these long ones, you have to follow these rules. It's the opposite. It's like, thank God we have a new format. Let's play with it. Yeah. And I think the only thing that you can tell here is that Tony had the freedom, as he likes to say, to clean up the mess. Make a mess and then clean it up his own way. There was never like any rules set, right?
No, I mean, I think people should just there's so much great experimentation on television right now. I mean, people are really all kinds of ways, in subtle ways. People that don't even have any money are doing stuff that's interesting. I mean, it's a fascinating time. It's a terrible time in the business, I know, for different reasons. It's tough to get a movie off right now. And the world sucks, but I mean, when it comes down to being a storyteller, a dramatist, man, it's anything goes. It's just fantastic. I think it's a really creatively, it's just so nourishing.
And then you have the thing about like audiences, right? Like they're unpredictable. Like that thing of like, oh no, people like seeing it this way. They consume this. It's not true. It's not true. They're like this format, because it's not movies. They don't have a beginning and an end, but they are one thing on its own, And what this has brought, like the chance to discuss a 2-hour piece every week and then wait for the next one, is very special. And it worked for this one, and it might be terrible for the next,
I mean, there's power, like you're saying, in the stuff that's leading up to Rogue One and these characters you're seeing. But, Dedra Meero and Cyril Karn didn't have to be the most fascinating characters on the show. They have no role in Rogue One, but they totally emerge in that way. So, like, you're taking the opportunities to build out and expand in a way that it feels like wasn't automatic. Like, not everyone would think to make characters like that and make them stand out in the way that they did. And
what are you going to do with all the real estate? You've got 1,500 pages. I mean, it's really, that was the reason to be here. I mean, that was the main reason to be here, to be able to talk about Revolution, to be able to work with him, and then to have this 40-mile canvas to paint, like after being trapped in 130 pages forever. It'll be interesting to see. I think the interesting question is, and I don't want to be the old guy suggesting this, but or bringing it up, but there will come a point where the rigor of learning how to write features and the strictures, the strict discipline of learning the phonics of how to, and the grammar of writing 130 pages and getting scenes super tight, and not ever having enough time. It'll be interesting to see as that legacy disappears. I'm in the generation of which it'll disappear. It'll be interesting to see if the same urgency stays in writing. I think there's some benefit. I don't want to be like, oh man, it was better. I'm certainly not saying that. I'm glad that I learned how to really draw before I started abstract expressionism, and it's, and it'll be interesting to watch that as that discipline disappears. But other than that, it's just so much better.
I think that about journalism all the time, about all the things that I learned that I had to slave through and people don't have to do anymore. It's like, but you get skills from that.
I know, but you don't want to be that person.
I know. I'll keep it simple.
Get off my porch if you're not going to. Exactly.
Pretty much. I mean, you said yourself, it's a challenging time in the industry to get so many things made. And Andor, in a lot of ways, feels like, I don't know if you could get a show made like this the way that you guys made it. And you may agree with it as well. So, do you think more shows like Andor can get made on this scale and with this scope? Is that possible now? And what are we missing out on if we can't get the next version of what you guys were able to do?
If they do, they'll probably be AI enhanced in some major way. I think you will be able to get the scale. I said one time, I don't think they're ever going to make a show like this again. And it came off, when you looked at it in print, it looked like some arrogant sort of thing. And that wasn't my point. My point was, I don't know whether thousands of people will gather in Pinewood to build a show like this with bricks and stuff and do all this stuff that we did and go to Scotland and be cold and be wet. And I don't know whether the society and practical outdoorsiness of movie making on this scale will be replicated, because there's too many challenges to it.
Yeah.
Go look. I was watching a Sergio Leone movie with my son one day, and they're coming up on the prison camp out in the desert, and there's 800 extras in there. And I said to my son, I go, can you imagine how much fun they had on that set for 3 months? Can you imagine the dinners and parties that went on in Almera all that time? And that'll never happen again, ever. They'd all be tiled. It would all be on a CG.
Yeah.
That's all gone. So I don't know what you lose when you lose that, but you lose something.
So you're saying you guys did have fun on set, even though it was
we didn't
really
have
hard
as
to make
much
the
fun
show?
as we should. No, we were robbed actually a lot.
We were robbed
because of COVID.
There was no celebration at all.
A lot. No. We were robbed.
But I don't know if at this scale, but I can tell you that I think as long as actors have a say, there's nothing like this when you're an actor. I don't know. You have to ask probably. I mean, if you ask Luke Hall, he will tell you that there's nothing but building and designing and constructing and seeing and interacting physically. But I don't know if every production designer will think the same way. But if actors have a say, this is gonna be happening, because there's nothing like this. There's nothing like interacting. And while you execute, being able to experience what you're supposed to be, the story you're supposed to be telling, right? When we shot Gorman Plaza, we were in the plaza, and I was seeing things happening in front of me, and it was a full choreography, and it was possible. So the scale might be crazy, but if actors have a thing to say, if we have directors that think in actors, this is going to be happening, because there's no better way, I think.
Yeah. Does the Gorman Plaza still exist? Did it get torn down already?
It all gets torn down. Man. They don't save anything.
People would visit that. I would love to go to
Man, they tried to save Ferrex.
I thought that with Ferrex.
They tried to save Ferrex.
Oh, really?
And I don't know the whole ins and outs of it. I don't want to get in trouble, but Marlowe, they offered them and said, hey, it's an 8-acre thing. Do you want to because it really existed. And they turned it down. But Star Wars is a lot of times you'll say, well, let me have the thing that they just used in this thing. And it's they got rid of it. Sets are expensive to store, I guess. It's never made sense to me that they don't have a deeper warehouse.
They build it all again in Disneyland, and they could just, send people out to Pinewood, wherever it is.
I will say that on season 1, out my window in Pinewood, Little Mermaid had the back lot, and it made me furious to look at them every day on my back lot when we had to go to Marlowe. And I was like, I got there the first day. I'm like, what do you mean? Why don't we have that? Oh, it's Little Mermaid. And they had their tank and their boat and their thing, on and on and on and on and on. When we came back for season 2, that was our back lot.
Gorman was,
and the Little Mermaid was gone.
Oh, so Gorman replaced the Little Mermaid.
It certainly did. It certainly did.
I know that we have to wrap up soon, and so now that we know where all these characters wind up, some of them are in Rogue One, some of them aren't. There's some characters who we're leaving off. Are any of them kind of lingering in your brain of what they get up to when the war happens? Anyone whose story didn't get resolved that I'm thinking of them, and I don't know if that's working for you guys. Of what's Vel doing during A New Hope? Is anyone stick out like that for you guys?
Well, Vel's on Yavin somewhere. She's committed. Where's Edie? Where's Edie? What's Edie up to?
Oh my God! You think she
I think
like, makes
she's
it for the Baldy
shoplifting.
Empire?
I think she's shoplifting now.
I feel like she's tough as nails. If anyone's going to make it on Coruscant through all of that, it's going to be Edie. Well, I know you guys love working together. I hope that you're going to do something again, even though Cassian Andor is out of your lives. Is this the time to start scheming about the next project, or do you need a few years break from each other first?
We've been holding hands under the table the whole interview, so I don't think you have to worry about us.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to it. That does it for today's episode. This podcast is edited by Brett Fuchs and produced by Brett Fuchs and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thanks again to my co-host and the Ankler himself, Richard Rushfield. Subscribe to the Prestige Junkie newsletter at theankler.com and subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We will see you next week.